Good morning, everyone. We are so excited to come to you this morning. I hope you brought your cup of coffee. We were talking right before the show that this is like what women used to do. Men sometimes, men meet at the coffee shops, but women meeting around the kitchen table, having a cup of coffee, talking out their daily problems and solving the ills of the world and child raising and working for some of them and all those things that you need support for. And for so many years, women went into the workforce and they didn't have that kind of support. And that was something that I think COVID brought out, that people knew that they needed community, they need each other, and they realized what it's like to be sequestered away, not being by anybody. Now, as y'all know, I'm from Texas, and we kind of bucked the system just a little bit. So, but it is the way it is. But for some of y'all out there, I mean, there are churches still locked down that have not opened up since 2020. There are people that are still masked up and have been masked up since 2020. So, for those of y'all that are unmasked, congratulations. For those that y'all are still masked, look at it again and hopefully you'll be unmasked soon. So I'm Carol Henderson and I have Life by Design, and I want to help you to live your best life and make the second half of your life better than the first. And I have my wonderful co-host here, Miss Barbara Ellison, and she's going to tell you about her and then herself, and then we'll introduce you to our guests. We have wonderful guests today.
Yeah, as Carol said, I'm Barbara Ellison, and I'm a transformational life trainer, and I specialize in aging gracefully because, aging is not about being 30 years old. It's about being your best ever self, of being confident and just being the best version of you. And that, physically, financially, emotionally. So that's what I do. And I am so excited to introduce our just absolutely fabulous guest, Heidi Jensen. And just so many things that we need to talk about that are concerns of women. And Heidi is like a homeschooling mom. And how she got there, what the challenges, the great things, the nuts and bolts. So if you're thinking about, being a homeschooling parent, great. Carol also was too. I was not. But you know what? Looking back now, I might have done it if I had been, I'm older. We didn't have the resources. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. So Heidi, welcome, welcome, welcome to Thoughtful Thursdays. And can't wait to hear what you have to share with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here with you. Brilliant, beautiful, best self ever ladies. I love that.
Thank you. We receive that.
We receive that.
I might steal the motto. I love it. But yeah, I'm from Minnesota and I have a 14-year-old and an almost 4-year-old. And I worked corporate America for, 18 years old. I got my first job and was very successful in climbing the corporate ladder. And I kind of did things, I don't know if you'd call it reverse or backwards. But when I was little, it was like, and I would dream big dreams. It was like dressing like $1 million and going into, the corporate world and, traveling, just all of those different things. And, I did all of those things and, got married, became a mother. And actually it was in 2008 with, the crash there, the economic crash. I just kind of did some reevaluating and sort of began to pursue the medical field a little bit because it was always such a great interest of mine. And then just that, reality and paying the bills and all that kind of stuff. I was back at corporate America again. But fast forward, my husband and I just kind of came to the conclusion that, we are a blended family and we just really wanted to provide that stability, for our kids. There's kind of this saying, like when you have young children, you want to be around all the time, you want to raise them, but when they're babies, it's easy for them to be cared for. And when they're teenagers, that's kind of a different story. You kind of want, her finger on the pulse of what's going on. Not that you can't do that if you work full time, but, they change. And it was a huge adjustment for me. It was for us financially as well. We scraped by for several years, but we just really did what we thought was best for our family. And, to be honest with you guys, I kind of went through a little identity crisis when I made that change as well. I learned a lot about myself and really the value or the stock that I put into my professional accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
And coming home and being home, it was like, you can pour into your family and pour into your family, which I take the greatest pride and joy in doing in serving my family. But I kind of had an identity crisis there for a little bit, for many years. It was tough.
Yes. Yes. So what did you do in corporate America?
Oh my goodness. I was always in the service industry. So primarily, like building automation, high-end security integration, stuff like that. So, yeah, it was really cool. Like buildings nowadays are like computers. They literally are hardwired like your computer is. So,
exactly.
It was very exciting, super high stress, but it was like,
fast paced.
Working in like an emergency room. Like that's what it felt every day, because when someone's like security system was down, let's say, and these were like financial institutions, banks, prisons, where security is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like the fire bell would ring in the morning and I would just logistically have to figure everything out and where to send everyone. And I supported an office that, like had offices or subcontractor agreements in all 48 continuous states. So like it was a big deal. I was busy.
Oh, I bet. So, and one thing too that I want to bring out is not only is she a homeschool mom, but her daughter's an athlete and does ballet competitions. Now, coming out of the model and talent industry, I loved moms like you that really took their children's dreams and desires to heart and yet didn't do it to live through them. I had a lot of parents that they wanted it more than their kids did, and that's a real red flag for me. But this woman is a road warrior. She travels all over. She was down here in Texas just a week or so ago. The problem is Texas is so big. She was in the middle of the state, and I was still 8 hours away from her, 8.5 even hours away. So even if I had thought to pop in the car and go down, one thing from being from Texas, people, if you ever went out of state for college, they'll call you up and go, I'm flying through DFW today. Come meet me for lunch. It was like, well, and how long is your layover? Do you realize what it's going to cost and take and time and effort and energy to get to you? Let's just do it. Well, nowadays, a Zoom call. But, that we've had those calls for 30, 40 years, from people that know us from other parts of the country, whether it's from ministry or school or whatever, and they just don't get the vastness of the state. So, you're in a pretty big state up there too. So all the different areas of the state. And so you get it, and because you travel so much. She's always on the road. She's always in the car. She's always at an event, and her daughter is just
beautiful and so talented.
Yes. Very, very.
Yes. And, saying that, and I appreciate your comment about, parents that, take on that position of living kind of, vicariously for kids. Yeah. And I so much of it.
Yes.
And it's heartbreaking, because it's pretty dominant. But that's what is just such a joy too, for my daughter, and how it's a dog eat dog, I think all sports, all competitive sports these days are just so aggressive, and the training is so demanding. And, you
Right.
know, these juggling school and their sports and in training. And, you know, it's just, it's a full-time job. It's a full-time job in itself, just managing her and her schedule. And, you know, I know a lot of people homeschool their kids for those athletic, you know, purposes. But believe it or not, a lot of people, you know, given Carly's amazing, you know, gifts and talents, you know, it was honestly her learning challenges that led us into the homeschool realm. So she was in like private, you know, preschool and early elementary. It was actually the first grade where we discovered that she kind of, you know, was struggling academically. So kind of sort of taboo to you know, to test kids that young because they don't really have much of a basis to test against.
Right.
Yeah. So in the fourth grade, again, everything kind of just continued to kind of regress. And she wasn't, you know, she would work so hard. And one thing I do want to bring up on here is that, you know, so she does have attention deficit disorder. A lot of people call it ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
Mhm.
But my daughter is not the hyperactive. And quite honestly, statistically, 80 to 85% of girls specifically have this diagnosis, and it's called ADHD inattentive, which is actually almost like the opposite of the hyperactive. Their brain becomes hyper focused because they know there's like a challenge there, and so they literally become distracted by over focusing. So yeah, it's crazy. And through literally the grace of God and just the right people coming into our life and crossing paths with us at the right time, we were able to find, you know, the support and the testing, you know, not just through the school district. The public schools don't do that. Only the private schools where she was don't do that kind of testing. It has to be through the public. So it was just a very crazy time and situation, but we were able to get, you know, a diagnosis and learn really that the typical brick and mortar school is just not conducive for her learning style.
Well,
Um,
and that's even on spades for boys. But it's
yeah.
usually for the high, but boys are more kinetic in their learning. And
Yes.
you know, they like the doing, and that's how they learn. And so, you know, for them to expect little boys to sit in their chair quietly all day is like, no. But you know, I'm so glad that more and more people, and I think a lot more since 2020, have started homeschooling, because
Yeah.
I am a major proponent for homeschool. It wasn't easy to start because my mom was a teacher. Her parents met as college professors. Now think about that. It was like in the 18000s, whatever, you know, and they were both college professors and met and married and had their family. And uh, out of the three children was one was a pharmacist and two were teachers. And so I understand what you're saying about the young children. My mom was first grade for I think 25 years, 25, 30 years. And so, you know, yes, it's hard to diagnose. And so many times they put labels just for ease. They
Yes.
put labels on and put them, you know, in their little boxes. And
Mhm.
nothing against the teachers. I don't think it's them. It's the system. And
100%.
yeah, yeah, we started homeschooling when it was still not totally legal to homeschool in Texas, because the Lemon versus Leaper case was still in court. And
Oh,
and we're down in Arlington, and going to museums and all this kind of stuff for like 2 weeks. And I told the boys, I said, y'all have got to mind, because Arlington was where the Lemon versus Leaper case was being tried. So, you know, it's like,
wow.
be very good. And, you know, we didn't have the support parents have now of all the computer classes and stuff. I actually had access. because of my mom being a teacher, to go buy old textbooks where I could get the teacher's manual and the planning guide and the textbooks. And so I bought multiple years of that. And we did use them and we didn't use them. We kind of did a system that I loved that my mom was familiar with, where it was immersion. And like, so
Yeah.
for 2 weeks, my son built rockets. It was still illegal to put rockets off in your backyard or in the park. You just needed to gather the debris. But, I mean, he would build rockets. And so all the boys helped him. And, that's just an example. It was rocks another time. It was, so kudos to you for doing that and going through that. Do you have any suggestions? I know that nutrition has been a big part of your life. Has that helped with Carly's situation and everything? Can you tell us a little bit?
100%. So, Carly, just her outside of her diagnosis, and just being an athlete, I was constantly worried about how she was fueling her body to, to do what she does. Yeah. She's 14 years old and I think she just hit 100 pounds. She's like 102 pounds dripping wet. But it was just something that I worried about all the time. And I cook and, we have huge gardens here in the summer. I pay attention to what I put in my kids' bodies, but at the same time, I just know sometimes how nutrient deficient our food is.
Right.
So again, that's why we started the gardens. We pay attention to what we put in our bodies. I'm a huge label reader. Try not to eat things that have a label even, but, if and when I do, it's like, I want to know what what this stuff is. And it's something actually that I've become very passionate about. And that is just all of the kind of misinformation and, what companies in our country get away with in, their packaging and in their marketing. And I've really, because of certain conditions that I've had in my health, I was really sick as a younger child with asthma and allergies, and had a ton of food restrictions, things I couldn't eat because they either created, kind of asthma attack type things, or just challenges, breathing, respiratory type stuff. So I was so limited in many things. And then some of that got passed on to my daughter. In nursing as well, I had to do a ton of food elimination with both of my girls, because what I was eating, they were sensitive to, and they developed these skin conditions. And, so I've really learned a lot over the years about that. And, it's just something that it breaks my heart to see people, even knowing within my own family, my extended family, people are trying to do the right thing and they're trying to eat healthy, and, you can count macros all day long, or, even kind of have an idea, where your food is coming from. And our bodies just don't know how to break down these things that are genetically modified or created, outside of, the ground, the earth,
I said, I live out in farm country. And I'm surrounded, my town, we're surrounded by cornfields, and we have beautiful crops, because they feed the crops. Unfortunately, the yield of the crops is nutritionally bankrupt because we're not a plant.
Right.
So consequently, what they're using to grow beautiful crops, great yield, but they're nutritionally bankrupt.
Well, and they've been modified.
They've been modified.
So modified. And I want you to come on our Aging Experts show, because over there we talk more in depth about these type things. So y'all, if you are interested in that type thing and wanting to know what you do and how you do and where you do all those things, I want you to come over, watch the Aging Experts is our other page here on Facebook. And we have that show, and we're going to have Heidi come on because she knows a lot about this. And we want to educate you, because people are like, oh, well, it's genetically altered. That's no big deal. One
Yeah.
of the things with genetically altering is they splice genes, and in the corn and in the wheat, almost all the corn, all the soy, except if it's specifically organic, and a lot of the other grains, they splice in a gene that causes insects not to, it kills the insects or animal type life. You ingest that, it gets in you, and it becomes part of you, and it can even become part of your DNA. People think DNA can't be changed, but it does. Your DNA and RNA can be changed. It's called epigenetics, but it can go in and then you are producing stuff to kill you because you're an animal.
Right.
100%.
Ever thought about that? Have you
Right.
ever thought about that?
The other day I posted a meme, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was like, where do they get the seeds to create seedless watermelon?
You're not supposed to say those things when I'm drinking my tea. Y'all nearly got to see it.
And it was like, oh my stars, exactly. What are we doing to ourselves?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So sorry, Carol. Yeah, that was funny. Okay.
That was not kind. That was not kind. We want kindness on this show. Wine. I'll take a little cheese with that wine. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, it's so true.
But it's so true.
What would you say to somebody thinking about homeschooling today? They're looking at it, they're thinking, I kind of liked how my kids acted when they were home. I've got to work, or I can go part-time. Is it worth it? Should I do it? How do I do it? Give me some little nuggets of wisdom.
Or if you're being nudged to homeschool.
Yeah. That's where those thoughts are coming from.
To homeschool.
Yeah.
Follow the nudge. The nudge is something really big that I am very in tune with. And when I get a nudge or a prompting, I know, even if it's beelining, excuse me, off of the track that I'm on.
Yes.
And one thing I'll say is that it's not right for every kid. If you have a household of 3, 4, 5 kids, it might not be the same path for every one of them. Just based on, the social aspect or the academic aspect, how the school day is structured, the activity level of the child. There's so many things to consider, and it's not one size fits all. Just like my child struggling in the typical classroom, there are other children that, thrive in that atmosphere.
I have a question for you on that. Do you have other things you do? I mean, is it just you and the kids all day long? Or do you have, I have examples, but
So with Cora, we're not, I work with, things, she's 4, she'll be, so we work on, things like that, phonics, just introductory type stuff. But with Carly, it's like she doesn't lack in the social aspect of things, because she literally trains 30 to 40 hours a week. So she has very, very close relationships with her teammates. We're driving, we're traveling, she's, working. So the flexibility of her academic schedule has been another thing that's been a great blessing for her, because of, the way her brain is wired. She actually does really, really great, like getting up and getting going in the morning and doing something that's physical. She actually doing the majority of her homework on the weekends, because she goes to dance early in the morning on the weekends, gets all that energy out. And again, she's not hyperactive, but it's just like her brain operates on a different level of calm and concentration once she has physically exerted her body. Where the weekdays, when she wakes up in the morning, does her breakfast, whatever, and then hits the books, she just has a harder time. So there's different things that we implement. We have like a timer. It's a certain method that they recommend for people that just have kind of concentration issues. But this timer runs on like a 25-minute roll. So it's like 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break, 25 minutes and a 5-minute break. And that kind of keeps her, on a path, but it with her social functions and the demands of her, athletic schedule and what she does, we don't, really have the need or the time, honestly, to go out and find, other things. She does youth group at church, Wednesday evenings, different things like that. But we, and two, when we're traveling, we try and, just get out and see what's around in the area, local museums or, just art, different things that are, just kind of educational, depending on, where we are.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I was just curious because we actually had a homeschool group and we named it, we gave our school a name. And at one point I was athletic director because the young man that did it had to step down because his mom died. Well, she was in the hospital lengthily and then died. So I stepped in there and Keith was the football and track coach. And while I was in that position, we had 6 volleyball teams, 2 football teams, our track team, which, of course, covers boys, girls, and everybody. We had 6 basketball. I guess it was 3 volleyball teams, 6 basketball teams. And we got one of our dads was the youth pastor at a church, or assistant pastor at a church that had this big gym. And it was so fun because we were able to get that gym on a regular basis. We had the whole concession stand, and another parent owned an Arby's. And so they were very food conscious. Cool. So they ran the concession stand and people would show up to watch the little 4, 5, 6-year-olds play basketball and stay till the varsity boys had finished. They'd plan dinner at the gym for their whole family because it was very reasonably priced. And it was just like, oh, this is just the heyday. That was about a 2-year span where we had that gym and all of that available. And it was, it was like a school. We had a school spirit during that 2 years, like a school.
I love
it's very unusual for.
The other thing people can look into is one thing that we have here is that we did last year was a homeschool co-op. So a group of, families and teachers, the teachers aren't teachers, they're tutors. But they had some really awesome electives. So every year we've kind of tweaked and done, different things. Last year was one of those years where she took her core classes. This year as well, she's doing her core classes online. And then, like, for example, a foreign language is very challenging for her to learn. So one of the things that are they call it like her exception. So if you're in the public school, this is like an IEP or a 504 plan, where it just kind of takes what the educational requirements are and kind of customizes them to that child and their learning style or challenges. And part of Carly's is like learning a foreign language would not be an easy task for her. Not that it is for anybody, but especially her. And they offered sign language, and that is like a different part of the brain.
Yeah.
It's
universal.
And she loved it. Like, even with her performance and dancing and stuff like that, like the sign language, there's so much like emotion and, different, qualities put into it. That was something that she really enjoyed. So like art, they had watercolor type things. They have theater class. They have core classes as well, but she kind of needs the online and having no textbook and having the ability of a recorded like live teacher, but then each class is like recorded so she can rewind if there was a section she never stand. So it's very supportive, like, for her. Cool. And I have to say thank you to Carol, for all of you that kind of paved the road for all of us now today in homeschool. My aunt was one of those, and they had, a lot more resources than like you did with your kids. But they're just more and more and more beautiful programs. I honestly think it was one of the beautiful things that did come out of, COVID, was people kind of being forced into that and then seeing the value of that and the time freedom of their children and being at home and, being able to not only influence, but to know what our kids are being exposed to, you know,
Exactly.
especially now.
I think
What
that
I
was
hear
eye-opening when they went online and some of the parents saw what was going on in the classroom.
big,
You know, one of the things we did, we ended up having prom, we had graduation, we did some things like that, and we were invited to one tournament and the board would not let us go. And that's a whole nother story. But anyway, but my grandchildren, well, two of my sons homeschool their kids, but one of them, she actually plays very competitive basketball, and they got invited to homeschool tournaments. They went to like Kentucky, they went to Houston, they've up to Denver, I think, but they've done several homeschool tournaments that, you know, gave them 4 or 5 days with other homeschoolers and the parents, and, you know, just the camaraderie and stuff. And that, you know, I'm like, oh yes, we never got to do that. We wanted to. We were invited to the very first one ever, I think. And so, yeah,
love that.
exciting stuff. So, well, this has been wonderful. I found out some things I didn't know about you. So, anyway, I've known Heidi a little bit, just kind of fringe, both in person and on screens. So, Barbara, do you have any last minute questions for her?
You know, one of the things that is so funny that you're mentioning it, one of the things that I have always wanted to do is learn sign language.
Oh,
Mhm.
there are so many, like,
I'll have to, you know, put a bee in my bonnet. I'll have to look into it. Maybe you can give me some
Well, I wish I'd
pointers of
known.
how to start.
I have 2 books, The Joy of Signing books. I have 2 of them. You could have taken one when you were here.
Send it in my package my care package that you're already making.
All the stuff you left here.
The stuff that I left there.
Okay, well, guys, I want you to plan on coming and finding Heidi over on the Aging Experts, because we're going to talk a little bit there about the nutrition, about what's happened to the food now, and how you can circumvent that and be healthy and nourish you and your children better, to reach out and learn the nutrition side of it, because that's one of the ways that both you and your children can be healthy into old age. As you know, the Bible says in Genesis 6, God says, I have appointed unto man 120 years. How many people live to that? I mean, out of all the billions on the planet, how many people make it to 120? We think it's great when they pass 100, which seems to
my
be
dad was
happening
102
lately. But we, you know, as we come into what's happening now and things start rectifying themselves, you want to be ready for that. You want to be ready to go full force into what God has planned for us in the future. So it's so exciting. But be sure to come hear what she has to say, because her daughter, health-wise, night and day. So
part of remarkable and a miracle.
Yeah.
And it's all paying attention to what I'm putting in her body.
Yes.
It does matter. Quality matters.
It does. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be pricey out the roof either. You know, that's the beauty of it. So, guys, Heidi, this has been great. I just have loved this conversation.
I love it.
I'm so glad Barbara and I started this station. So anyway, guys, thank you. Appreciate it. And we will see you next week. Talk to you soon.